You're listening to Investify, preaching financial independence and assisting investors to achieve a more flexible and free lifestyle through smart financial planning and real estate investing. If leaving the corporate world and jumping into this thriving industry is what you desire, tune in and listen to stories of like-minded individuals who made the leap to financial independence. Equip yourself with the right tips and tricks to start your real estate journey, making active or passive ventures that are highly profitable and rewarding. Here are your hosts, Craig Kurlop and Ziana McIntyre.
What's going on, everyone? You are listening to Investify. My name is Craig Kurlop, aka the Fi Guy, and I am here by myself today. Ziana is doing a trip to Washington, or actually she's coming back from Washington. She just finished furnishing her Airbnb, so if you haven't already checked out her Blueberry Cabin Airbnb, definitely check that out. And we've got a pretty cool show today. Before we get into the show, we usually ask this at the end, but again, we really would appreciate if you could just leave us a rating or review on iTunes. It is super appreciated. We try to look at all of the feedback. We try to make changes to any suggestions you have. And of course, the more ratings, the more reviews, the more this show gets sent out to all the people. And again, we want to... When we all hit financial independence, we all want to be together. We want to be together with our friends, and this just helps us, spread the good word. And Justin is actually our guest today, who is a very good friend of mine, and he's got a great story. One thing I love about his story is that it is so relatable, probably the most relatable story we've ever had on this show, because he really did not fall into any stroke of luck. Everything that he has done to date is 100% repeatable by anyone listening. And really all it boils down to is just saving, and methodically saving over the course of 5 to 7 years, letting compound interest do its thing. Sure, the stock market and the markets have done well over the past 5-7 years, maybe not so much this year, but still he's been able to create a massive amount of wealth, a pretty large amount of wealth, for not doing anything crazy like going out and doing 100 deals or raising a bunch of money, right? Just basically putting money in the stock market and saving. And so we're gonna go through his story here. And so let's bring him on the show.
Hey everyone, big news. Investify has now partnered with Rent Ready. And yes, we've partnered with Rent Ready because that is the software system that both me and Ziana use to do property management for our rental properties. It makes things super easy. We can send applications, get background checks and credit checks. Tenants, when they come in, can pay rent automatically through there. They can submit maintenance requests, do everything you need to do for property management all in one place. That's why Rent Ready is the thing that we've done. I've been using them for years now. And that's why we reached out to them for a relationship on the show. And so again, super excited to have them on board. If you go to rentready.com and use the code Investify, you'll get 50% off your first 6 months. That's right. 50% off your first 6 months. If you go to rentready.com, sign up and use the coupon code INVEST2FI. And can't wait to see you there. Let us know, hit us up on Instagram, hit us up on wherever, and let us know what you think of Rent Ready. Because again, I think it's an amazing software. I use it all the time. You can access it from your phone. Amazing stuff. So thanks so much. And let's get back to the episode.
Justin Taylor, welcome to the show, my friend. How you doing today, dude?
Man, I'm doing good. Just shaking off a little jet lag, but excited to be here.
Yeah, man. Where were you just at again?
I was out in Saudi Arabia, which I also hit Bahrain for a few days.
Saudi Arabia, that is not a place that you hear a lot of people saying they're coming back from. What got you out there?
Yeah, I had a buddy that I was in the Air Force with who's out there, and he thought he was going to be out there longer than he ended up being out there, and so it's like had to make one of these last minute quick trips out there. Timing was perfect. They were ending Ramadan, going into Eid, one of their big celebrations. So yeah, just that's what brought me out there. I didn't really know what to expect. I just felt like, hey, when do you have a chance to go somewhere like that, have someone can show you around, have a place to stay, have a car, like make everything super easy. It just made it really approachable.
Awesome. And I know you did that on a fairly, you probably didn't need to do it on a budget, but I know you and your brand, you did it on a budget. So that's awesome, man. So let's take it back, man. That's today. Let's take it back to where and when did you first hear about financial independence?
Yeah, I would have been close to your neck of the woods. I'd have been in Colorado. It would have been in around April of 2014. And so I guess what got me into it is I'm sitting there. I just graduated from college. I'd commissioned in the Air Force. I had my job that I'd been wanting. You know, I'd been striving to commission in the Air Force, been striving to graduate from college, all these things. I kind of hit all these milestones. But I wasn't happy. And that really was struggling with that. I was like, I don't know what to do now. Like I've hit all my accomplishments, but I'm still not happy. And then I had an opportunity to, you know, I know you're familiar with that trip down there in Cozumel, where going to see the orphanage and meeting some of those kids. And from that trip, I realized, hey, like this kind of stuff is where the happiness is, not anything else, not these accomplishments. And so I just started trying to figure out, how do I get there? Like, how do I get to where I can do whatever I want to with my time, and I can spend time giving back. I can spend time with my family. I knew that's where happiness would really come from. And that led me down the rabbit hole of researching, you know, how do I stop working? What are countries with really low expenses? Things like Mr. Money Mustache, what have you. And that's kind of what set me off on my journey.
That's awesome, man. And so I guess, how did you know that you weren't happy, right? Because have you ever seen happiness, right? Or like what was your baseline?
I'd always been like just a super happy, kind of carefree person. And I was honestly kind of the opposite. Like I'd never saw what really depressed really felt like. And so that was shocking to me. I was like, whoa, I don't like this. Like, what is this? And as I started kind of introspecting, you know, into myself, I'm realizing I think it's because I've hit all these goals, but I've also moved, you know, 18 hours away from anyone I've ever known. And so I'm alone. And like, that's when I realized that these accomplishments is what I was kind of racing towards, but being alone is the problem. Like not having the people around me and the things that give me the joy is the problem. And so how do I bring that back? And how do I guarantee that I never have to say no to that? You know, was a big part of it.
Okay. Yeah, I love that, man. So, okay. So it's, you know, we're in 2014, you're kind of having this revelation. You find Mr. Money Mustache, you kind of start to see the light. What happens next?
Yeah. So, you know, naturally with my upbringing, it was pretty easy to have like a high savings rate, because I was in that scarcity mindset, like naturally. You know, growing up, we didn't have much. You know, my mom had my brother when she was 15, so like there's never been a lot of money. You know, there's a lot of history there with my family, and then raised as a single mom, and so we just didn't really have anything. I grew up in North Mississippi. You know, if you hear my accent, that's where it's coming from. There's not a lot of money floating around there. You know, I graduated from this tiny little public school in the country where no one had money, just never seen money. And so even though I was only making like 40 something $1,000 a year, to me that felt like a ton. And so saving, you know, 60-70% of that was actually not that difficult, because to me, you know, having, you know, a few $1,000s to spend was like a ton of money. I'd never had any money. And so I went and got roommates. You know, I was spending $400 a month or something on rent, and had a paid off car, because I just, you know, had this mindset of you don't borrow money for things, like you just pay for things you can afford. And so I didn't really have a lot of expenses, and it made it pretty easy.
Awesome. And so when you said you had a roommate, was that a house hack, or did you just simply rent a place with roommates?
No house hack. It was there was this website you could search for people at, like specifically like military people around bases, and I rented this guy's basement out that I didn't know, and so I guess he was house hacking because he owned the house, so he was renting the basement to me and this other guest bedroom to a JAG officer. But I mean, I was paying nothing.
Wow, that's all. Yeah. So I think that's, you know, there's always a silver lining, right? I think a lot of people in this space, not a lot of people, but a decent amount of people in this space that have had that scarcity mindset growing up where money wasn't super available. And so that is almost like the foundation of achieving early financial independence, right? It's just having that, being able to spend $20,000 a year and still being happy, right? And so how much are you making? You said you're making about 40 or 50,000 at this time in the military?
Yeah, that's correct.
And you're still in Colorado Springs?
At that time, yeah.
Okay. And so, all right, so let's keep going here. And so your savings, so how much are you saving when you're in the military now that you kind of like are intentional about saving?
I'm saving like 65-ish%, like 65, 68%.
60. Okay, so 60% of 50,000. So you're basically saving $30,000 a year on a $50,000 salary.
Yeah, at least. Roughly. Yeah, I don't think I'd even I don't even think I quite spent $20,000 those first couple of years.
Okay, and that's insane. That's insane that you're able to do that without house hacking, right? Because you still have, while your mortgage expense is still super low, or your rent expense is still super low, right? It's still probably one of your largest expenses, if not the largest expense you had. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say like the largest single expense.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. So yeah, let's keep going then. Like, so what happens from there?
Yeah, so things are pretty stable there for a couple of years. You start getting slight pay increases in the military as you make a different rank, but you're in the same location. Things improved financially when I got actually stationed in Boston, which is where I moved next, and that would have been kind of January 2017 when I moved to Boston. The way the military pay works, part of your pay is kind of location based, and that part is tax free. And I would say that out of all the places in the country, Boston is probably the easiest to make money on. And if there's anybody who happens to be, listening, who's in the military or has a spouse or friend who's in the military, I think there's a mental trap you can really fall in where it's like you want to go to these low cost of living areas because you're thinking that's where I can save the most money. But if part of your pay is based on the location and you get paid more to be there, like that actually gives you room to save money. And I guess a good example would be, like if you're stationed somewhere in the middle of nowhere in Montana and they give you $1,000 a month, well, you could sleep under a bridge and save $1,000 a month. Or in Boston, where they give you $3,000 a month, you can spend $1,000 a month on a place to stay and save $2,000 a month. There's room to actually save money. So I think it's a common misconception I saw people fall under, where they would go and target these low cost of living areas and not think about the real math behind it. So moving to Boston, I got a big increase there. Again, that's tax free. And then later on, I think it was 2008, pinned on captain in the Air Force. Now at this time, I'm bringing home, like after taxes, closer to $90,000 a year.
Okay, so you're making $90,000 a year in Boston, and so in Boston, I'm from Boston, and so I know I lived there too. I know it's expensive, and so like how did you find a place to live? Did you just rent a room? I mean, there's colleges all around the area, so it probably was pretty easy to find a place. Or did the military hook you up with some sort of housing?
No, yeah, the military didn't hook me up with housing. That's another, I would say, kind of misconception from people outside the military is that, like, everyone in the military just has their housing paid for. They live on base, whatever. That's true for some like junior enlisted people, but that's not true for most of the military. It wasn't true for me as an officer. So anyways, yeah, I found my house just literally looking on Craigslist, found this awesome older gentleman who was my landlord. He was like a true guy from Southie, like Italian, had the crazy Boston accent. Neither one of us could understand each other. But he kind of specialized in placing people in these units where he was renting out, how all those houses are around Somerville and stuff, where it's these 3-story houses. Each level is normally like 3 people living in it, and he's putting all the random people together. He's kind of putting that puzzle together. And I think I was paying like $700 a month for rent in Boston.
Wow. Okay. So you're still you're on a percentage basis, right? I mean, $700 a month for rent in Boston is crazy low, even in 2017, 2018. I think when I lived there in like 2015, I was paying $1,100, and I was sharing a bedroom. So like that is nuts.
Yeah, I just looked it up. It was $775 to be exact. That's what
$775. So your housing, your housing expenses did double, right? It went from $400 to basically $800. Your salary went from $40,000 to about $90,000. So the percentage that you're spending on rent is about the same, right? Maybe it's a little bit better in Boston, believe it or not. And so you're in the military. You're making $90,000. I guess how are you getting around? Are you buying a car in Boston? What are you doing for food? What else is there here?
Yeah, so I'm still like have a really good savings rate. I'm spending about around $25,000 a year in Boston. My car was paid off. I had still have it. It's a 2013 Ford Fusion hybrid. Food is one of those things where, for whatever reason, I mean, I guess I understand it, but people always want to talk about my food budget, even though if you really think about it, it's not moving the needle if I doubled my food budget. But since I've been tracking my spending, I generally spend around $60 a month on groceries, and that always like freaks people out.
Yeah. This is back in 2018 though. This isn't now, right?
It's
Oh,
it maybe has went up just like slightly in the last year, but that's pretty much like since I started tracking in 2015 to currently, it's probably in that $60-$70 range pretty tightly. It might be a little bit more, getting closer to $100 a month now.
okay. So I know it's not doesn't move the needle, but food is probably the third largest expense that people spend on, and I know this is kind of like your expertise, and so I just wanna unpack it a little bit here because we literally just came back from the grocery store and we spent $125 for 5 meals, basically for like 5 or 6 meals that we're going to be having here, and so what like uncover it, man, uncover it. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'd say first of all, like I don't have any food allergies. I'm also not buying like the organic grass-fed pampered meats. Like, I'm just buying like your typical stuff from the butcher counter. Mostly going to be like a lot of boneless, skinless chicken breasts, maybe some chicken thighs, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, sweet potatoes, things like that. We don't buy sodas. We don't buy boxed stuff. We don't buy snacks really. We just kind of buy the things from the refrigerated section. A lot of people say stay on the outside of the grocery store. It's very true. The other thing I would say is, some people feel like, okay, you got to have a grocery list or else you'll go crazy and you'll buy too much stuff. And so that's what keeps you in bounds. I'm actually a big non-believer in grocery lists because if you go to a grocery store and you see, and you've got on your list, like, well, I've got to buy like a pork loin or name your product. And then you go there and it's like, oh, well, this crazy deal on chicken thighs. Like, there's no reason you can't make the exact same dish with a different meat or a different vegetable or whatever. Like, be flexible. Just get more comfortable with cooking, get more comfortable with substituting things in and out. Don't go towards those dishes that have an encyclopedia of ingredients. And to me, those like things will help you really keep that budget low on groceries.
Okay, so it's basically just keep it simple, stupid, right? Like, don't follow the recipe. Like, you get a veggie, get maybe a carb if you want carbs, and get a meat, and that's all you really need. And the other thing, in depending on where you are in your journey towards financial independence, right? In the early stages, maybe you should be eating grass-fed, grass-finished organic meat, right? If you want to get there, like that's honest, I'll admit, like that's why our meals are more expensive. Is like my wife is really into like the grass-fed, grass-finished, all that kind of stuff. So we're buying meat at like $9-10 a pound, and it's like, you know what? I worked really hard for like 5 or 6 years scraping on beans and quinoa to get it so we can eat this stuff. But when you're in that scraping and saving mode, and if that healthy food is not something that you're valuing at that time, then like by all means, what you're eating is not an unhealthy diet. You're not going to McDonald's every day, right?
100%.
You're not eating the snacks and the sugary stuff. You're eating veggies and you're eating meat, and you will still be very healthy doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, we always still really valued health. I mean, working out, eating healthy, like keeping our weight in a good place, like keeping a good, muscle mass, all that good stuff. But, just never really kind of cross that bridge into that deep into the nutritional kind of journey and looking for the specific types of meat that were raised in specific kind of ways. I mean, my dad raises cows, so like I'm pretty familiar with how everything works, but I just never got that deep into it.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. And so you're in Boston, dude, right? Like, and you're in your mid-20s, it sounds at this point, right? Mid-20s, maybe late 20s. Boston's a fun place to be. Red Sox won the World Series in 2018. Like, there's some parties happening. So what are you doing? Are you having fun while you're in the city, or what's going on there?
Oh yeah, I mean, I had tons of fun. Actually, I would have people who always would say things like that when they would see my budget. And really, it was just hyper focused on what brought me happiness, which was like travel and experiences, and all the other stuff was cut out. And so one year I actually put together this Google Doc of all the trips we went on. And it would have been 2019, which was our last year while we were living in Boston. And it was nuts. It was like it was too much, honestly. Like, it was to the point where the next year we looked at each other. The pandemic ended up coming in and taking care of that for us. But we looked at each other like after 2019, before the pandemic even started, and was like, hey, we can't do this again. Not financially, just like it was running us into the ground. We did so many trips. We went so many places. It was like every weekend it was a concert or a sporting event or, flying somewhere, whatever. And as you know, like I've got all the data, like I've got every single purchase I've made since 2015 in a spreadsheet. and I'm always super transparent about it. I always throw it out on the blog exactly what I'm spending money on. So I was definitely not just like at home sitting on my hands. I think that's a common painting of me. Sometimes it gets around. It's like that people think I'm probably just like eating cardboard and beans, and I sit at home and I don't do anything. And nothing could be further from me.
Yeah, no, and I know that for a fact too. I know you're a super fun guy. I always love hanging out with you. Okay, the second question that I know you probably get a lot, and maybe you got this when you were single, is how the hell do you think you're ever going to meet a woman spending this amount of money? And so tell us a little bit about how you met Leslie.
Yeah. So it was hilarious. Like someone actually took one of my articles and posted it on like a financial independence, subreddit, which you would think is like, hey, these are our people. They're going to be supportive. And it was about this trip that me and Leslie took to Hawaii. And all everyone did was just start like bashing me and telling me about like how miserable she must be and all that yada, yada, yada. And first of all, I think that's like extremely sexist to think that like, that like I need to provide for Leslie. Like she's not her own human who's not also today making six figures and doing a great job. But the other thing is like, it's also just kind of naive to think you can't have a ton of fun and go a lot of places without spending a ton of money. But anyways, how I met, and I know that's not you, I'm just saying like the masses, right? How I met Leslie was actually in Colorado. It was this, it's probably that could be a whole podcast there on how we ended up like meeting each other. But condensed version is that, I was friends with a girl in the Air Force who went to college with Leslie in San Antonio. And now, I'm friends with this girl in Colorado who's in the Air Force. And Leslie also has a job in Colorado. She comes over to our house. Actually, funny enough, it is me coming back from the second year of my mission trip. Like I literally landed that night, get home. Like it's kind of like a house party vibe. And I'm like, I don't even know who some of these people are. And Leslie knocks on the door and I've just gotten off the plane. So I think luckily for me, I was looking real tan, making a good first impression. And so we
give it back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we go out that night and kind of the rest is history. But then, it was kind of tough because we dated for a couple months and she moved to New York. So we did long distance for almost 3 years. But yeah, we've been together for almost 8 years. Almost 7 years now.
Wow. Yeah. So super long time. Obviously, if you can get through the long distance, I think you can almost get through anything. But did she have anything to say about your like extreme saving habits? I mean, like you're not normal, dude, right? Like, like it must have been like a little bit of like a shock to her, or did she just like love you for who you are? I mean, she's a great person, but so maybe she did.
I think the biggest thing is like there was no like smoke and mirrors. I wasn't like trying to act like it was going to be one way and then like start changing things all of a sudden. I mean, it was like, I vividly remember at Phantom Canyon, in Colorado Springs, one of our first dates. I somehow get off on a tangent about how excited I am about like this like price per pound of this chicken I found. And then I remember taking us to the $2 Tuesdays at Fox and Hound. Like I remember these things vividly and like whooping out a coupon for like a free entree. It was like my birthday or something, So I think it was just like very clear early on that like when there's opportunities for me to save money, like I'm going to take those. But at the same time, like, we're going out to national parks, we're camping, we're going on trips, we're going to concert festivals, like we're going to, beer festivals, we're going to all these things and having a good time. But like when there is an opportunity to save money, I'm going to take it every time pretty much, like as long as it's not getting in the way of me having a good time, then I'm going to take those opportunities. So I think she also realized that because like some people can think like, oh, that must be exhausting for myself or for her. But it's just like this weird second nature thing I have. I don't spend a lot of brain power on it. I don't think about it. It's just natural to me. It just kind of happens. And it would probably stress me out if numbers never cross my mind. Like if I stopped thinking about it, I'd be stressed about like, oh, what am I missing? It doesn't stress me out thinking about it.
Right. No, I think that's great, man. I think a lot of people get fulfillment in different ways. Usually it's in some way of being creative, right? And so some people it's making more money. Some people it's saving more money or how to save that dollar one way or the other. And so now, man, I know that you and Leslie are like super happy, and I can like, see that based on all the trips that you guys go on together, right? And you're doing all these experiences. And I honestly, I'm sure a lot of people are wishing they could live the life that you were living if they could just look to see what you're doing and not see what you're spending. Be like, how the heck do these guys afford all this stuff? But then look, you're spending maybe $20,000 or $30,000 a year. And so I want to keep talking about that, right? Because now you're making more money, right? You're making 90 grand, maybe six figures or so. And we're looking at 2018, 2019. And are you still, how much have you increased your lifestyle, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, the only real increases was just due to the natural difference in housing costs going to Boston from Colorado. Other than that, everything stayed pretty flat. I was still saving 70% of my income. I was spending, across 2017 into 2018, I was spending about $2,300 a month, all said and done in Boston. And that, that includes everything, like all the housing, food, every penny that I spent is about $2,300 a month, which was up a little bit from Colorado. It was almost completely tied to just the housing change, that extra, $300-400 a month.
Right. And so you're still spending basically the same amount, right? Are you making over six figures at this point, or are you still at that 90,000?
So at that point, like when I said 90,000, that's after taxes. So most people would, it would take a six-figure job to make that much money. It just gets difficult to compare like a military income with a non-military income because the tax situation is so different. And so that's why I always just talk in after-tax dollars. So it would take a six-figure job offer, to be able to bring home the same amount of money that I was bringing home, because I was bringing home $90,000 a year.
Okay, and this is while you were in the military. And so when did you leave the military?
So that would have been like the 1st of September 2019. And I vividly remember because I literally had like 1 week off between the military and my corporate job, and that was FinCon DC. So that was like, I left the military at the very end of August. We did FinCon DC, and then I went to work like that second week of September in 2019.
Okay, and so what was your job there in September 2019?
Yeah. So this company called Pivotal, which was they're started out of California, but they had an office in Boston down near Kendall Square. It's a software company. The role is called a customer success manager, which unfortunately sometimes when people hear that, they think you're like answering phones and tell people to restart routers, but it's a little bit more I think valuable than that. It's basically when a company buys a product, it's normally what you call like a SaaS company, a software as a service company. They're gonna purchase the product once, but then every year, sometimes not as often, but normally every year, they're gonna have like a renewal where it's like, okay, do we want to buy this product again? And it's up to you to have that person be successful and to see the value they're getting from the product, and to also look for opportunities to expand within their business to increase the amount of money they're spending. So you're just really managing that account, that life cycle after the initial sale. So you're not doing like a cold call, but you're still looking for expansion opportunities. That's actually still the same role I do now. It's just our company was acquired by a different company, and I manage some people now, and I've moved teams. But essentially, that's the same like function that I'm the role that I'm playing in now.
Okay, awesome. So how did you acquire the skill from the military? I guess what gave you the qualifications to go to this job?
Yeah, so my background was computer engineering. Like that's what I went to college for. My last couple jobs in the Air Force is really what helped me. So one job was what they would call a green door or black world, kind of more classified jobs, but it was dealing with IT. And then my last job before I got out was we were helping organizations across the Air Force take their old applications, pair them with like a contractor to help them refactor that code so that it can be run on public cloud like AWS, Microsoft Azure, instead of being run on-prem on the actual Air Force base. And so that is like exactly what this company who was hiring me was looking to help customers do, was to transition from a more antiquated model on-prem to in public cloud. And so I was used to those personas. I was used to talking to those people. I was used to the problems they're facing. So honestly, when I joined the team, the kind of technical aspect of it and the conversations in the day-to-day was way easier for me than I think it was for even some of the employees who'd been there for a little while, because they were CSMs, but they're from different companies who had like a different expertise. And at the end of the day, other than some of the technical knowledge, it's all just soft skills. I mean, it's just, how to talk to people, how to problem solve, how to manage a project, which, I personally think that anyone, if they put their mind to it, could do.
100%, man. 100%. All right. And so what do you? I suspect you probably had a pay bump from military pay to the corporate private world.
Yeah, for sure. That's where a big pay increase happens. So if I've got all my numbers here, and the way they kind of work is I happen to start tracking my spending on an April when I started tracking it. So my fiscal year is like April to March. So when I say 2019, that'd be kind of like April 2019 to March 2020. And so I look at 2019, like my last, which is mostly, when I was still in the Air Force, I was looking at just a little under $9,000 a month take home. And then move forward to 2020, where I've got like a full year under my belt, where the whole year is me making money in my new corporate job. Now I'm looking at like $16,000 a month take home after taxes that I averaged over that course of that year. And so I've doubled my salary kind of instantly take home wise, way more than doubled it on a W-2 standpoint, but even take home wise, I had doubled it.
Wow. And so, and I suspect you're kind of living at the same, still, right? You're so focused on saving to hit this financial independence marker. You're still saving.
Yeah, and actually, it got even more aggressive. Like my savings got more aggressive because of just COVID. Basically, COVID cut out a lot of my travel, which is where most of my spending was going. It also, I didn't know COVID was coming, but in February of 2020, I'd always wanted to make like a little camper van, and I fell in love with the Ford Transit, not the one that most people see, the big ones, but the Connect. It's the tiny little Ford Transit. And I just thought it'd be so cool to take something like that and turn it something you can live in, because it just does not look like you could possibly like live in it or even sleep in it overnight because they're so small. And so I found one. I start converting it. Then the pandemic happens, and it turned out to be like perfect timing. And so me and Leslie take it on a big trip. We go like across New York. We go to Notre Dame's campus. We go to Chicago. We come up to Colorado. Actually, me and you hung out on that trip. We went on a hike for a friend's wedding. And on that trip, it was completely unplanned, but we were going to surprise Leslie's mom in Austin. And the night before, we're literally driving through the night to surprise her. Again, she doesn't know we're coming. She just makes a statement like, "Hey, our little condo downtown Austin that we've had since the 80s, it's coming, it's opening up. Like the person's leaving. We need to find a new tenant." And so when we were in, we surprised her, and we're like, let's go check this thing out. And we started talking to them, and we realized they're renting this apartment for at least 50% below market value. It definitely needs some work. It's not being managed properly. And so just right there and then we make a decision like, hey, let's ask our bosses, can we go remote forever, regardless of what COVID says, or regardless of the status of COVID? And if so, we'll move to Austin. We will pay you basically just your property taxes, which is combined for the two of us was $275 a month, I believe. So we were just basically paying the property tax amount. So that was $275 a piece. So, it would have been like $550 total for the two of us to live in an apartment downtown Austin. In exchange for, we would stay there for like a year. We would renovate the place. They gave us a small budget, like $3,000 to buy materials. We would renovate the place. And then when we moved out, we would find someone who would rent the apartment for at least, 50% more than they were renting it for then, and we would handle all the property management stuff. So my rent went, all the way down to $275 a month, and there was so much less travel in 2020. We had lots of trips canceled, a lot of things refunded, right? Like we'd bought all these tickets and all these concert tickets and plane tickets, and those are all being refunded. So now my expenses are just dropping. And so that year, that 12-month period of April 2020 to March of 2021 was pretty nuts. My average spending was $1,288, even though I'm making like the most money I've ever made in my life.
That's nuts. Holy crap. So you're making like well into the six figures at this point, and you're spending $1,200 a month. Holy crap.
My savings rate was 92% that year.
Wow. Yeah, I think COVID did that for a lot of people. I know for like COVID for me, like it allowed me to like not travel and focus tons on growing my business, and I made more money than I ever made in my life in 2020. So I think, I think when things like this come up, when COVID and when unforeseen things come up, it's like the resourceful people and the people that kind of like can take the different situation and adapt to it to make it the most advantageous for them, right? If you're in that victim mindset, which most of America was, it was probably a bad year for most people. But you'll see who can kind of take control of that. And it sounds like you were one of those people, man. And so you just didn't go back to Boston from that van trip. Then it sounds like you moved right from Boston to Austin.
Well, we cut our trip a little short so we could get back up to Boston and like get all our stuff sold, pack up, and get out of there. So literally, I think it was like 30 days, maybe 40 days since from the day we like pulled into Austin, have this aha moment till we're moving the U-Haul back to Austin.
Okay. And you're obviously working throughout this trip, right? Like on the van trip. I mean, you're coffee shops and kind of like living the van, like the Instagram van life that people are showing, where you're, laying in front of the Grand Canyon with your laptop on your lap and answering emails or whatever.
Yeah, it was a bit of that, but now, this is a tiny van, so it wasn't really ever our intention to live in it. So we spent a few nights in it, but we're also breaking it up by, like, when I visited a friend in Chicago, we stayed with him. Like we're in New York, we slept in the van, but we were hanging out at my buddy's house all day. When we were in Colorado, we were at a friend's wedding. They had this kind of like hotel type arrangements. When we were in Austin, we were staying at her parents' house. Like we spent a few nights in it. And we were able to like pull over and work from it when we needed to, like you said. But this is a tiny van. I mean, it is like smaller than a lot of passenger cars. It's like, so it was not really meant for living in. It was never really the intention.
Right. Cool. All right, man. So, that kind of takes us to, basically to today, right? And so I guess where are you at today, right? You still working that same job? Do you like the job? Are you looking, like, why are you doing all this? Why are you saving so much? And when are you going to quit?
Yeah, no, great question. I do like the job, and I'm actually going through interviews this week for a promotion to manage the team. I really like the team. I like the challenge. I like getting to mentor people. With having, we have our own podcast at the Fi Show, and we interview a lot of people, and obviously, like yourself, there's a lot of great real estate success stories out there, and it's something I wish I would have leaned into more. But I've always really enjoyed my W-2, and I try, I've beat myself up about that many times and feeling like, oh, I'm so far behind when I compare myself to these other people. But you're happy, you're traveling the world, you're seeing things, you're in a good financial spot. Like, it's easy to fall in that mental trap of comparing yourself to somebody else. But no matter who you are, there's somebody doing worse or somebody doing better. So, it's not good to get too wrapped up in your success, and not good to get too down on yourself about the person in front of you succeeding more.
Dude, I love that you just said that, because I found myself in that place maybe 6 months ago, where I thought that I wasn't doing as good as I should have been, or I should have been like leaning into real estate more, and so I can make more and all that. And then I kind of like took a step back and I'm like, pump the brakes. Like, I basically able to do whatever I want whenever I want, right? And so I just think, like, as long as you are happy, your spouse is happy, you're healthy, what more could you ask for, right?
Yeah. And I have started kind of loosening the reins a little bit in this last year on spending. We bought a house. I got me a new truck. I basically just made a decision, like, I'm happy with my job, but like, since I do have this steady flow of income coming in, I want to take this time to experiment with, like, would these things actually make me more happy? Like, I don't want to wait, retire, have this kind of essentially a fixed budget, and think, I wonder if like having a new vehicle would actually make me happy. Like, I just want to go ahead and knock out all those assumptions and scratch those itches, and then keep the things that matter to me and get rid of the things that don't, because I've never really let myself experiment too much with like some of those things. I can also pay off a lot of things right now while I'm working that won't be ongoing expenses. Like, I could just buy a new vehicle, I could buy a camper, I could do these things, and then they're not expenses, later in life. So I'm kind of using this as a real experimental time, and it's funny though. Like, I'm still saving, close to 80% of my income, even though I'm spending, just because I've been able to keep increasing my income to the point to where I can spend $4,000 a month and still, to me, $4,000 a month is crazy. Like that's a new truck payment. That's a nice house. That's doing everything I want to do, and I'm still saving whatever, like 80% of my income. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're a different breed, my friend, and I love it. So I take it did you buy the truck cash? Did you buy the house cash, or are you getting this? Obviously, interest rates are super. I don't know if they are. We're super low when you bought them, but
super low when I bought them. Yeah, I don't
yeah,
know. Yeah, today maybe not. So yeah, I mean, I would say like earlier on, I had a real problem with like borrowing money and feel like I owed somebody something, to the point like when I bought my Fusion back in the day. I was like, okay, I'm going to build my credit up. I didn't know anything about personal finance. I was like, I don't know. I think this would be good for my credit. I think I had one regular payment. And then when I went to make my second payment, I was like, I can't stand this. And I paid it off. But like with this truck and how much more comfortable I am with, the way financing works and, just the math behind it, it's a 0% loan. Like I don't have any interest on this truck for 5 years. Like, why would I pay it off? The house is a 2.6 interest rate. Like if they would have given me a 130-year loan, I would have took it. Like, I don't care,
Yeah.
Like at interest rates that low, I always feel like I can outperform it. Obviously you can have things like this year where, we're into 2022 sitting here, the returns don't look great, but long term, I believe that I will take all the money you'll give me at 0 or 2.6%. So no, I did not buy them cash. I actually didn't put a penny down on the house, and I ended up making money closing on the house. So I'm not a big real estate aficionado, but I feel pretty proud about that one.
Yeah, I suspect you did the VA loan, or what was the?
Did the VA loan, and then our realtor gave us a percent back, so we actually ended up, making a few grand off purchasing the house, and no PMI. So.
Awesome, man. That's congratulations. And so, I kind of want to give a quick recap, right? Like this whole money journey started for you really, it sounds like in 2014. And how much money did you have? Like, did you track your net worth, or when you first started tracking your net worth, where were you at? In what year was that?
Yeah, so when I first started tracking my spending, that would have been April of 2015, and I had $38,000
of net worth. So, okay, and that it sounds like it's mostly. I kind of read your article, right? Mostly through your birthday gifts and whatever, kind of like small salaries and all that kind of stuff at the time, right? Kind of saving slowly. And then fast forward to your most recent one, maybe it's 7-8 years later. If you feel comfortable sharing where you're at now, I think it would be cool to see where this journey has taken you in a pretty simple way.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, because like in April 2015, like you said, 38,000. I had already been working full time for a little over a year, so that most of that money was money that I had just saved cash from working that year. Like going into my career, I had no money. There was no inheritances. There was nothing like that. No handouts. No money was given to me. Go to college on from my parents. Like none of those kind of things. Had the government career for most of this journey. Had the civilian career for like 2 years. And then in October of 2021, so I would have been 31. I hit $1 million. And so, the markets are all over the place. I'm still over $1 million. But yeah, I became a millionaire in October of 2021, which feels crazy to me with the background I came from. And I look around at, where I could have ended up coming from my little town in North Mississippi. There's not a lot of people make it out. And so while I feel like privileged that some dominoes fell the right way, I'm also really proud of, the work I put in and what I was able to build.
Yeah, man, I think like your story is just such an incredible story. And I think the one thing I want to take away from that the most is that you did it in such a simple way, right? You're not trying to like sling a bunch of real estate deals, and you're not trying to like raise money from other people and make things like really hard and really risky. It's like what you did was so not risky, right? Like anyone could do it. It's just a matter of like, hey, are you okay being a little bit different? Right? Like, I guess that's okay. One last questions for you. But did you get any flack from your parents or people that you loved or people, for not spending a lot of money, or for like, dude, what are you doing, man? You're a millionaire. Why are you still getting the free expired meat or whatever it is? Like,
I guess it's a little bit of a mixed bag. Like, again, the way like we grew up, just being frugal was natural. It was normal. And I was also like a weird subset of that. Like I was like an extreme version of that. I was always into math, even as a little kid. I was always into money, even as a little kid. You know, my uncle used to always tell the story that was one of my favorites, where me and him and my cousin are riding down to Hattiesburg, Mississippi to visit my aunt. And he sends me in the store. I'm like probably 10 years old. He sends me into the gas station to get some Cokes. Now, he wanted Coca-Colas because my whole family on my dad's side, like, I'd spent time working for Coca-Cola. But in the South, like, people call all soft drinks Cokes. That's just like kind of a little behind the scenes, you know, knowledge there. And so he tells me go in there, get some Cokes. I'm in there for like 10 minutes. And he's like, what is going on? I finally come out and I've got something like a Shasta Cola or something. And he's like, I told you I wanted Cokes. And I started explaining to him about how much the cost per ounce, how much cheaper this soda was than the soda he asked for. And he's like, I don't care. It's not what I asked for. It's because this is like, you know, this is before they start giving you the little cheat code, a little orange sticker that told you exactly like what the price per ounce or pound or whatever it was. You had to calculate it yourself. And so I'm sitting there as like a little kid, and I was always really good at doing math in my head. And so I was just sitting there figuring it out. And I come back and I'm so proud of myself. I'm like, look at what I just did. And so that's always been like ingrained in me to be that type of person. I would say people who don't know me as well, you get the flack from. And so when I've done presentations, one of the slides like I always show is like, it'll just be this one slide that'll have just dozens and dozens of pictures over like whatever the previous year was and all these trips I went on. Like, okay, can we just like squash this and put this to bed now? Like, here, what have you done in the last year, right? Like, you talk to almost any American, like, what have you done in the last year? And I guarantee you I'm in the top like 5 percentile of like the amount of trips and things I'm going on. So like just this whole like mentality of like kind of like YOLO or whatever, like you're going to miss out on life. Like it's a choice. You either get to enjoy life and save and retire early, or you know, like you got to pick one or the other. Like you either save the money or you retire early. Is just a pet peeve of mine. Like you can definitely have both.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think you're a living, walking example of that, man. All right, man, we're going to head into the final part of our show. But before we do you have any other words of wisdom for the audience?
You know, I'll pull out one of my favorite ones is, since we talked about food, is just a thing to kind of keep in the back of your head, is kind of this intersection of like when you think about what you're eating, also when you think about like what you're spending your money on and what you get value from. It's a simple question I'd ask people, which is like, hey, what'd you have to eat for lunch last Tuesday? Weird question. Most people can't answer it. And that's the point. You don't remember. Like, you don't even remember what you ate last Tuesday. Things that you can't remember that you spent money on a week ago, like those are the things you can remove from your budget. Those things that you like light up when somebody, like you want to tell people about that concert you went to, that trip you went on, like you get excited to talk about it. Those are the things that deserve like a sacred place in your budget. You should not like cut out unless you have to, unless you like hit some kind of life event. Like focus on cutting out the things you can't remember. So, you know, when you're getting Uber Eats in the middle of the night, you know, for $40, you know, when you're getting $5 worth of food, like you don't even remember that, but it's really impacting your ability to reach financial independence. So just ask yourself, hey, what did I have to eat for lunch last Tuesday, as a litmus test to figure out what's important in your budget.
I like that. I like putting that, like giving some kind of like tangible like context to like what should I spend on and what shouldn't I spend on. I haven't heard that before, but yeah, spend on the things that you'll remember, the experiences, the trips, the relationships, and get rid of the things you won't, right? It doesn't matter what you're eating for food as long as you're just eating something, obviously. But awesome, man.
Hey guys, if you're thinking about becoming a real estate agent like us, you might want to go to Kaplan. That's where I got my license, and I found that they made all this really dull information actually kind of interesting and very memorable. So if you're looking at getting your license, see if they have your state. They cover a lot of states, but not all of them. And if you want to get a little discount, use our code INVEST2. So the word invest and the number 2. Thanks, guys.
All right, so with that being said, we will head into the final four.
The final four.
These are the 4 same questions. Well, one is a little different that we ask everybody every episode. And so the first one is, what book are you reading right now?
I was actually listening to this book called San Francisco, which was kind of talking about some of the homeless situations in California and maybe some of the history that, you know, has led up to it. whether you like kind of would agree with the author or not, I think it's important to listen to like both sides of arguments. So I like kind of pushing myself to think about both sides. And it's an interesting book around kind of, like some of the drug situations and poverty situations in different large cities, and kind of tackling like, how do you solve these problems? Like, how do you solve homelessness? Like, is it straight money? Do you build the houses? How do you like, what's the litmus test for who gets to live in those houses? Like, it's a very complex problem. And so I've been trying to learn more about that.
Interesting, man. Yeah, I haven't heard of that one, so that's good. All right, second question is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Best piece of advice I've ever received. I've been fortunate to have jobs that I actually really enjoy. And I think, especially like coming from my dad as someone who I would also see that I thought like, really tried to maximize the most of a dollar, and like money was important. For him to tell me that like the best decision he ever made was one time when he walked away from a job that was paying more to become a police officer, which is like the career field he ended up in, like how much happier he was. I guess just almost like to be able to give myself that flexibility to say, hey, like I can make decisions that aren't necessarily the most financially safe if it means I'm happier, like to go ahead and go with that. Like seeing someone else who, I know is not just like living on hopes and dreams, right? Like they're a very rational person, to give me that kind of advice meant more. So I'd say that.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. Love it. Third question is, what is your why?
Yeah, my why is definitely the relationships, the people, like the experiences. I don't need a lot of fancy things. I don't need people to know who I am. I don't need any of that. I just want to have like those sitting around the campfire moments, those like pointing at something and saying, hey, I changed someone's life for the better. Like those are my why for sure.
Love that, man. Love it. You're definitely changing a lot of people through your blog and through hopefully this episode and a lot of different other things. Fourth and final question. What weird, embarrassing thing could you find in your search history if we looked at it right now?
Probably the amount of like sloths. I resonate greatly with the sloth animal, the expressions they make, their lifestyle. I just get a kick out of these like funny sloth videos where they're just like interacting with people and other animals. So probably sloths. Slow
and steady.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Just like never a care in the world. Just oblivious to what's going on outside the house.
Just smiling and slow. I love it. All right, where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so you can just Google Saving Sherpa, and luckily that has pretty good recognition as far as the website will pop up, Instagram, Twitter, it's all Saving Sherpa. It's technically saving-sherpa.com, but you could just Google Saving Sherpa. And then also, me and Cody have the podcast over at thefishow.com. And you can find that on Spotify or just wherever you listen to podcasts.
Awesome, man. Yeah, it's a great podcast as well. So definitely go give that a listen. Follow his blog. Justin, one thing I love about your blog is that you are excruciatingly transparent into your budget and into, you're showing your net worth, you're showing how much you're spending, you're showing how much you're making. And so just to kind of like follow along and see your journey from, if you're listening to this, like, where are you, right? If you're making 40 or 50 grand a year and you're kind of early on in your journey towards FI, go look to see where Justin was at that point and see where he was spending. And then in 3 years from now, when you're making 90 to 100 grand, you can go back and look at Justin and see where he was, what he's doing, spending 90 to 100 grand. Like this, I think that was the purpose of your blog, right? Was to like, so people could go back, relate to where you are in your journey, because your story is just so relatable. And again, just don't reinvent the wheel, right? Copy and paste. And, in the next 6 or 7 years, you'll likely end up with $1 million net worth, traveling the world and going to Saudi Arabia for 10 days or whatever the heck that you do.
Yeah, it's like you said earlier, it's not the craziest story in the world. It's not like this get-rich-quick scheme, but I hope that it is relatable. I hope that everyone realizes that they can also do the exact same thing. And that's why it was so important to me to be super transparent, because I literally wanted to give people kind of the cheat code. That's where the name comes from, Saving Sherpa, is I wanted to be someone's guide, someone that could follow along to the destination and see exactly, follow me step for step. And so that's what I hope people can do, and I hope they can find it relatable.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a long time coming, and it's great to have you on. And I'm sure I will be seeing you sometime in the near future. I feel like our paths always cross. And so if you ever find yourself in Denver, or I don't know if you know, but we just moved to Idaho. So if you find yourself in Idaho, definitely let us know and we'll link up.
Will do. Same for Austin.
All right, man. We'll talk soon. And that was Justin Taylor, one of my good friends from SavingSherpa.com. And again, one thing I really love about Justin and his story is that, well, why I love his blog, because it is just so transparent. And I mentioned that, right? That you're able to see everything from his spending to his expenses. And so wherever you are in your journey, go track his story and see where he was at, where you're at now, and just follow him step by step, right? I think it's a super easy thing to do. And, take some of his tips, right? Whether it's the food, whether it's the travel, whether it's whatever it is, how do you get cheap housing, right? Anyone can spend less money, right? And then as you methodically grow in your career, you're going to make more money. So your savings rate is going to increase. As your savings rate increases, you're able to save more, invest more. Time is on your side. Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world, right? And so that will generate you tremendous amounts of wealth, so that then you can go ahead and, again, live the life that you want to live. And I know Justin very well, and I know that he does a lot of traveling, probably 4, 5, 6 months of the year. Him and his girlfriend are out traveling with friends, by themselves, whatever it is. And so they live a super nice life. And so, again, if you want to go back and re-listen to this episode, I think that he provides some great tips, especially saving for food. That's like his number one thing, I think. But yeah, figure out. I love the tip that he gave, is that those things that you can't remember are the things you can cut out, or the things that you should really try to spend less money on. The things that you can remember, think about your experiences, your vacations, your trips, your relationships, all those things. Those are the things you're going to think back and remember. Spend frivolously on those things. Cut back extremely on the things that you won't remember. So that about does it for this week's episode. Again, if you could please leave us a rating or review on iTunes, that would be amazing. And definitely give us the feedback. You can always hit me up on Instagram. I'm at the Fi Guy. So just let us know how we're doing. And we will see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
That's it for this episode of Investify. We hope that these nuggets of real estate wisdom lead to more savvy financial planning and a clearer path towards financial freedom. For more content like this, subscribe to the show at investify.com. Don't forget to leave a rating and share it with your friends. Together, we can transform more real estate newbies into successful and clever investors. Thank you so much for listening. See you on the next one.